My fiance kept comparing me to her perfect ex, so I dumped her the same way he did. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit! I was engaged to this woman until I noticed she couldn't shut up about her ex. It started as random stories, then turned into full-blown comparisons on literally everything I did. So I made a decision. I took her to her favorite restaurant, let her think we were planning our future, waited until dessert, then I smiled, held her hands, and told her I was leaving. She absolutely lost it. I walked out and never looked back. Here's how it all went down. I, 32 male, met Olivia, 28 female, at my friend Dan's Super Bowl party 2 years ago. I wasn't planning to stay long, just show my face, grab some wings, and head out. After finalizing my divorce months earlier, I'd gotten used to keeping to myself. My ex-wife Claire had taken me for almost everything in the settlement, thanks to her shark of a lawyer. The divorce dragged on for 14 brutal months, drained my savings, and left me in a crappy one-bedroom apartment with furniture from Walmart. When the final settlement came down, I lost 60% of our assets despite the fact that I'd earned 70% of our household income throughout the marriage. The cherry on top? I had to pay $1,200 a month in alimony for 2 years. The legal fees alone set me back $27,000. My 401k got decimated. My buddy Dan kept bugging me to get back out there, but dating in your 30s after divorce is a special kind of hell. I decided I was better off focusing on rebuilding my career. I just made senior project manager at my construction firm and was finally starting to feel financially secure again. The promotion came with a $15,000 salary bump and better health insurance. I'd paid off my credit card debt and was starting to rebuild my emergency fund. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my bank account with dread before every purchase. Then Olivia walked in with Dan's cousin. She wasn't dressed to impress, just jeans, boots, and a vintage leather jacket. But she had this confident way of moving through the room. Unlike most of the women there who were decked out in team jerseys, they clearly didn't understand. She wasn't pretending to care about the game. When the Chiefs scored and everyone went nuts, she caught my eye from across the room and shook her head with this little smirk, like we both knew something no one else did. Turned out she didn't give a shit about football either. We ended up talking on Dan's deck for most of the game. She was smart, an architectural designer who actually understood what I did for a living. By halftime, we were swapping horror stories about difficult clients and laughing like we'd known each other for years. She gave me her number without me asking, and we had our first date that Wednesday at this hole-in-the-wall Thai place downtown. The conversation flowed naturally. No awkward silences, no checking phones, no dull small talk about the weather. She told me about growing up in Michigan with a contractor dad, which explained why she understood my work so well. I told her about my divorce without dwelling on it. Just the facts. No bitterness. She didn't pry or judge. Things moved pretty quickly after that. Within 3 months, she was staying at my place most weekends. By 6 months, we'd taken a road trip to visit her parents in Michigan. Her mom, Beth, was warm. Her dad, Mike, seemed to genuinely respect what I did for a living. He immediately took me to his workshop to show me the custom cabinets he was building. We spent hours talking about different wood types and finishes. At the 9-month mark, Olivia's lease was up, and it just made sense for her to move in with me. I'd managed to upgrade to a decent 2-bedroom apartment by then, thanks to a big bonus from landing the hospital renovation project. The new place had in-unit laundry, a proper kitchen with granite countertops, and a small balcony overlooking a park. Moving her in was surprisingly painless. She didn't have much furniture, just clothes, books, and some art pieces she'd collected. Her minimalist tendencies complemented my practical nature. We got into a comfortable rhythm pretty quickly. Adopted this pit bull mix named Tuck from the shelter, and for the first time since my divorce, I felt like I was building something that could last. Tuck was a piece of work, missing his front right leg, but moving around like he never noticed the difference. The shelter said he'd been hit by a car and abandoned by his previous owners. Their loss. On our 1-year anniversary, I took her to dinner at this fancy steakhouse downtown and proposed. Cost me 3 months worth of careful budgeting, but seeing her face when I pulled it out made every ramen dinner worth it. She cried, said yes, and we spent the weekend celebrating and calling friends and family. We decided on a relatively long engagement, about 18 months, so we could save up for a house down payment at the same time as the wedding. That's when things started to change, or maybe that's when I started to notice. It started with little comments here and there. James always made breakfast in bed on Sundays. James never forgot to pick up coffee on his way home. James, as I would come to learn in excruciating detail, was her ex-fiancé. They'd been together for 5 years and engaged for the last 2 before he ended things. From what she told me initially, he'd gotten some job opportunity in California, and they'd broken up because she didn't want to leave her job and family in Michigan. At first, I didn't think much of these comments. Everyone has a past, right? I certainly wasn't innocent there. I'd been married before. But as the months went on, the comments about James became more frequent, more specific, and weirdly, more targeted. 8 months into our engagement, James' references had become a regular part of our life together. I started noticing a pattern. Whenever I did something thoughtful, or we hit some relationship milestone, Olivia would find a way to bring up how James had done it better. When I surprised her with tickets to her favorite band. This reminds me of when James got us backstage passes and we met the drummer. When I fixed the garbage disposal. It's still making that noise. James would have known what was causing it. I kept track for 2 weeks straight once, counting 17 distinct James references. That's more than one per day. And it wasn't just that she mentioned him. It was how she mentioned him. Always in comparison to me. Always with me coming up short. It was like living with a ghost. Some perfect phantom ex who excelled at everything I attempted, even in areas where I had actual professional expertise. I've been managing construction projects for 10 years, but supposedly James, a lawyer at some prestigious firm, could install drywall better than me. Right. What made it worse was that Dan started noticing it too. We were at a barbecue at his place, and Olivia was telling his wife Kelly about how James would marinate steaks for 24 hours with this special blend of spices. Dan pulled me aside later and asked, "What's with all the James talk, man? She does that a lot?" I shrugged it off, tried to play it cool. Yeah, it's nothing. Just her ex. Everyone's got baggage, right? But Dan, never one to let shit slide, said, "My ex used to compare me to her college boyfriend. Constant little digs. It was her way of keeping me insecure, keeping the power. Just saying." That conversation stuck with me because Dan had hit on something I hadn't been able to articulate. These comparisons did sometimes make me feel inadequate, and they seemed to come up most often when I was feeling good about our relationship or had done something I was proud of. I tried talking to Olivia about it one night after she mentioned how James had this perfect system for folding laundry that saved so much space. Apparently, this guy was also a world-class laundry folder. Is there anything he couldn't do? Part of me was starting to wonder if this James guy even existed, or if he was some composite of every romantic hero from every movie she'd ever seen. "Hey, I've noticed you bring up James a lot," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "To be honest, it sometimes feels like you're comparing us, and it makes me uncomfortable." She looked genuinely surprised for a second, then her expression hardened. "What? Are you serious?" She shook her head with a look of disbelief. "You're keeping track of how many times I mention my ex?" "I'm not being insecure," I said, feeling my face getting hot. "It's just that every time I do something, there's always some story about how James did it better." "That's not true," she said firmly, crossing her arms. "I barely mention him. You're reading into things that aren't there. You're being controlling right now." "Controlling? How is asking you not to constantly compare me to your ex controlling?" She stood up, throwing her hands in the air. "I don't have time for this. I have a presentation to prepare for tomorrow, and I'm not going to waste my evening reassuring you about your fragile ego." She grabbed her laptop and stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. I sat there, stunned. What had just happened? I'd tried to have a reasonable conversation about something that was genuinely bothering me, and she'd turned it into me being insecure and controlling. I felt like I was taking crazy pills. That night, she slept with her back to me, and the next morning she acted like nothing had happened. I decided not to bring it up again. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. But the shit continued, and if anything, they got more pointed. When I couldn't make one of her work functions because of a project deadline, James never missed a single one of my events, even when he was swamped at work. When I bought her flowers. These are pretty, but James knew I prefer wildflowers to roses. When I suggested a weekend getaway to a mountain cabin, James once surprised me with a trip to Napa Valley. He arranged a private wine tasting at 3 exclusive vineyards. And that's how it was. James this, James that. I started withdrawing, choosing my actions carefully to avoid triggering another James comparison. I stopped suggesting restaurants. I stopped buying gifts. What made it even worse was meeting Olivia's friend Zoe, 29 female, who had known both of them since college and had been there throughout the James relationship. Zoe came to visit for a weekend about a year into our engagement, and she seemed surprised by some of Olivia's James references. One night when Olivia was in the shower, Zoe said to me, Has she always talked about James this much with you? Because it's weird. Their relationship wasn't perfect. Far from it. He was actually kind of controlling about a lot of things. That was the first crack in the perfect James narrative, and it made me start wondering what else Olivia was misrepresenting. Later that weekend, we were all having breakfast at this cafe downtown. Olivia was telling a story about how James had surprised her with front row tickets to Hamilton when it first opened on Broadway. Zoe frowned. Wasn't that Mark who did that? I remember because James was annoyed that you went with your ex. Olivia's face flushed. No, it was definitely James. You're mixing it up with something else. Zoe shrugged, but the look she gave me over her coffee mug spoke volumes. That was the second crack. Things really started to unravel around the 14-month mark of our engagement. We were 4 months away from the wedding. I'd just signed the contract with the venue, a renovated industrial space downtown that Olivia had fallen in love with. $12,000 non-refundable deposit. Another $8,000 for the caterer. The wedding industry is a racket, but whatever. It was her dream wedding, and I was committed. We were at dinner with my brother Derek, 36 male, and his wife Tara, who were visiting from out of state. Derek and I had gotten close again after my divorce. He'd been the one who let me crash on his couch for those first devastating weeks when I couldn't stand to be alone in the apartment I'd shared with my ex. Derek is the straight shooter in the family. No filter, no BS. He works in finance, makes obscene money, and doesn't suffer fools. Olivia had met Derek and Tara a few times before, and they'd always gotten along well. But this time, Olivia seemed off. She was drinking more water than usual and kept checking her phone under the table. When Derek was telling a story about their recent vacation to Costa Rica, Olivia interrupted to say, James and I went to Maui for 2 weeks, and he surprised me with a helicopter tour of the volcanoes. There was an awkward pause. Derek glanced at me, eyebrow raised. Tara, always the diplomat, asked Olivia a question about the helicopter tour, and the moment passed. But it happened again. Tara would talk about her new job. Olivia would mention how James had been the youngest partner at his law firm. On the drive home, I finally said something. What was with all the James talk tonight? It was embarrassing. What are you talking about? She snapped. I was just participating in the conversation. By bringing up your ex every 5 minutes? Derek and Tara noticed it too? Oh, so now you're all talking about me behind my back? Nice. Real mature. She gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the night. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Derek. Everything okay with you guys? Just checking in. That's when I knew I wasn't crazy or insecure. Other people were noticing it too. A few weeks later, I ran into Zoe again at a coffee shop near my office. She was in town for business and suggested we grab lunch. I was hesitant, but I wanted to know more about this mysterious James who had apparently hung the moon. Over sandwiches, Zoe dropped a bomb. Look, I've been thinking about this a lot, and as Olivia's friend, I probably shouldn't be saying anything. But as a human being, I can't watch this happen. James didn't exactly leave Olivia for a job opportunity like she says. I put my sandwich down. What do you mean? He left her because he couldn't take the constant criticism anymore. Olivia did to James exactly what she's doing to you. Except back then, it was her college boyfriend Tyler she kept comparing him to. Tyler always remembered my favorite flowers. Tyler knew how to fix my car. It was endless. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Are you serious? Zoe nodded. James put up with it for years. He tried talking to her about it multiple times. She'd stop for a week or two, then start up again. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and ended things. The job in California was just a convenient excuse. She sighed. I love Olivia. She's been my friend forever. But this is a pattern with her. She idealizes her exes and uses them as weapons against whoever she's with now. My sandwich sat forgotten as I processed this. By the way, how exactly did James end things? He got a new place, moved his stuff out, transferred to the California office of his firm. Then he took her to this fancy restaurant and broke up with her over dessert. Told her he'd be leaving for San Francisco the next morning. Zoe winced at the memory. He blocked her on everything immediately after. Complete ghost. I nodded slowly, processing this information. Thanks for telling me. I'm only telling you because I care about both of you. Olivia needs help, but she won't get it if everyone keeps enabling her. And you deserve better than being compared to a fictional version of someone else. As I walked back to my office, pieces started clicking into place. The way Olivia had reacted when I brought up the James comments, the contradictions in her stories that Zoe had pointed out, the pattern that had played out with multiple exes before me. That night, I went to bed with a decision forming in my mind. Over the next few weeks, I developed my plan. I'd been offered a position overseeing a major development project in Denver multiple times. My company had been trying to get me to relocate for over a year, but I'd always declined because of Olivia. The Denver position came with a $28,000 salary increase and potential for further advancement, career-making stuff. Now I called my boss and told him I was interested if the offer still stood. Well, we'd need you to start ASAP. The current project manager is leaving in 3 weeks. I can make that work. It did, with a substantial raise and relocation package. I accepted on the spot. Next, I contacted my old college roommate Eric, who worked in commercial real estate in Denver. He helped me find a luxury apartment in a downtown high-rise, way nicer than our current place, and handled all the paperwork remotely. Panoramic views, rooftop pool, private gym, underground parking, $2,800 a month. But with my new salary, I could swing it comfortably. I arranged for movers, set up utilities, and forwarded my mail, all while Olivia remained completely oblivious. She was so wrapped up in wedding planning and work that she didn't notice my frequent phone calls, or the fact that I was slowly clearing out my home office under the guise of decluttering. I updated my banking information and moved most of my savings to a new account at a different bank. I made sure Tuck's microchip and registration were updated with only my information. I even started packing and moving out items gradually, telling Olivia I was donating old clothes and electronics to make space in our apartment. "That's thoughtful," she said absently, not looking up from her wedding Pinterest board. "James used to donate to that same charity." Of course he did. Dan figured out what was happening when he stopped by one day and noticed how empty my closet was. "Are you splitting?" he asked bluntly. I nodded. "Don't say anything. Not yet." He looked relieved. "Thank God. She's been terrible for you, man. The constant James shit, the way she dismisses your opinions, the eye-rolling when you talk. You deserve better." Having Dan's support made me more confident in my decision. But the real validation came from Derek. When I called to tell him my plan, he said, "It's about freaking time. Tara and I have been worried sick about you marrying this woman." With everything in place, I made my final preparations. I booked a table at the fancy French restaurant where I'd proposed to Olivia. I scheduled the reservation for Friday night, exactly 2 weeks before our wedding. I bought Olivia a pair of diamond earrings as an early wedding gift, an extra twist of the knife that I'm not proud of, but by this point, I wanted her to feel the same shock and betrayal I'd been feeling for months. The day of the dinner, I was eerily calm. I sent Olivia a text saying I was taking her somewhere special that night and to dress up. She responded with excitement, assuming it was some pre-wedding surprise. I wore the suit she always said looked best on me. I was attentive, charming, engaged throughout the appetizers and main course. We talked about the wedding, the honeymoon plans, the future, and I let her believe it was all still happening. When dessert arrived, I reached across the table and took her hand. I could see in her eyes that she thought this was going to be some romantic moment. "Olivia," I said, voice steady, "I've accepted a position in Denver. I'm leaving tomorrow morning." Her smile froze, confusion crossing her face. "What? Tomorrow? We're getting married in 2 weeks." "No, we're not. I don't see you in my future anymore." The color drained from her face. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "It's not a joke. I've already found an apartment. The movers are coming for the rest of my things while you're at your final dress fitting tomorrow. I've taken Tuck with me." I placed my credit card on the bill. "I think it's best if we make this a clean break." Recognition dawned in her eyes, quickly followed by anger. "You're breaking up with me the same way James did? At the same restaurant where you proposed?" I didn't confirm or deny. "Interesting that you immediately recognized the pattern." She started to cry, mascara running down her cheeks. "Why are you doing this? 2 weeks before our wedding? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is going to be? Was it humiliating when you constantly compared me to James? When you made me feel like I would never measure up, no matter what I did?" My voice remained calm, almost detached. "I've spent nearly 2 years trying to compete with a ghost, Olivia. That's not fair. I never meant—" "You did mean it. Every single time. And when I tried to talk to you about it, you dismissed me. You laughed at me." The waiter approached, sensed the tension, and quickly retreated. Around us, other diners pretended not to notice the drama unfolding. "You can't just leave," she hissed. "We have deposits on the venue, the caterer, everything. My family has booked flights. My dress cost $5,000. "I've already transferred you my half of the deposits," I said. "What you do with them is up to you. Personally, I'd suggest a nice vacation. I hear Maui is lovely, though the helicopter tours are overrated." I stood up, buttoning my suit jacket. "Goodbye, Olivia." I walked out of the restaurant, her voice calling after me, not looking back. As I slid into my car, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The fallout was immediate and intense. I turned off my phone as soon as I left the restaurant and stayed at Dan's that night. Tuck was confused at first, pacing around Dan's apartment and looking for Olivia, but he settled down eventually. The next morning, as planned, the movers came to get the rest of my belongings, while Olivia was at her dress fitting with her mother and bridesmaids. I'd made a detailed inventory of what was mine versus what we'd bought together. Anything that was jointly purchased, I left for her. The couch, the dining table, the kitchenware. I only took what was indisputably mine. No room for her to claim I'd taken advantage. Dan's wife Kelly went to the apartment after the movers left to make sure they'd gotten everything important and reported back that Olivia had come home early, found the place half empty, and had a complete meltdown. She'd tried calling me over 100 times, left dozens of voicemails ranging from tearful pleas to vicious threats. "She's telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown," Kelly said. "Her mom is there now, and they're both calling everyone in your wedding party to tell them it's canceled." I didn't listen to any of the voicemails. I boarded my flight to Denver that evening with Tuck in a carrier under the seat in front of me, my phone still off. When I finally turned it back on after landing, I had over 100 missed calls, not just from Olivia, but from her parents, her friends, even some of our mutual acquaintances. The voicemail inbox was full. I had dozens of text messages ranging from concerned, "Are you okay? What's going on?" to furious, "You cowardly piece of garbage." I blocked them all without reading the messages. The only people who had my new number were Dan, Derek, and my immediate family, all of whom supported my decision once they understood the full picture. I spent that first week in Denver setting up my new apartment, starting my new job, and trying not to think about the nuclear explosion I'd left behind. The apartment was exactly as advertised. It was on the 17th floor, with views of the mountains. Tuck loved the dog park in the building's private courtyard. The new job was intense, but exactly what I needed. 60-hour weeks, complex challenges, a team that respected my expertise. The project was behind schedule and over budget when I arrived, which gave me the opportunity to demonstrate my skills immediately. Dan kept me updated on the essentials. Olivia had canceled the wedding, her parents were furious, and she was telling anyone who would listen that I'd had some kind of mental breakdown. Supposedly, the stress of the wedding had made me snap, and I'd fled to Denver in a fugue state. Classic move on her part, rewriting history to make herself the victim. What I didn't expect was for the story to spread beyond our immediate circle. About 2 weeks after I left, Derek called to tell me that Olivia had posted a long, detailed account of our breakup on social media, painting herself as the victim of a cruel, calculated betrayal. She conveniently left out the 2 years of psychological warfare she'd waged with her James comparisons. "She's claiming you stole money from the joint wedding account," Derek said, "and that you'd been planning this for months while pretending everything was fine." Well, she got that part right, at least. She's also saying you took Tuck illegally, that he was her dog. That was rich, considering I was the one who'd picked Tuck from the shelter, paid the adoption fee, covered all his vet bills, and got up for his 6 a.m. walks every morning while Olivia was still asleep. Some of her friends found my work email and sent me messages calling me every name in the book. A few relatives I wasn't close with reached out on social media to express their disappointment in me. I didn't respond to any of it. As far as I was concerned, that chapter of my life was closed. I changed my email settings to automatically filter anything from unknown addresses into a separate folder that I checked once a week for any legitimate business. Then came the email from Zoe, about a month after I left. The subject line was simple. She did this to herself. "I just wanted you to know that while Olivia is playing the victim publicly, privately she knows exactly why you left and how you left. She's been sleeping a lot and admitted to me last night that she might have brought up James too much. When I pressed her on it, she broke down crying and said she couldn't help it, that she felt like she had to keep you on your toes so you wouldn't leave her like James did. The irony is completely lost on her. Anyway, I thought you should know that at least one person isn't buying her innocent act. Take care of yourself in Denver." That email was validating but also sad. It confirmed what I'd suspected. Olivia's behavior was deliberate, a misguided attempt to protect herself by keeping me insecure. I threw myself into work and my new life in Denver. I made new friends through a hiking group, got Tuck enrolled in doggy daycare so he wasn't alone while I worked, and started rebuilding my life piece by piece. The sting of how things ended with Olivia faded a little more each day. My new job turned out to be exactly what I needed professionally. The project was challenging, a sprawling mixed-use development with retail space, luxury condos, and office buildings. The previous project manager had left things in shambles with permit delays, contractor disputes, and budget overruns. Perfect chance to prove myself. Within 2 months, I'd straightened out the permit issues by meeting directly with city officials and reworking the approval timeline. I negotiated new terms with the subcontractors who were threatening to walk, saving the company nearly $2.3 million in potential legal fees and delays. The regional VP personally called to commend my work, hinting at future opportunities once this project wrapped up. Tuck adjusted well to Denver life. He loved the dog park in our building and made friends with the neighbor's husky on our floor. I established a routine. Up at 5:30 a.m., quick run with Tuck, shower, coffee, at the job site by 7:30. Home by 7 most nights, takeout or a simple dinner I'd meal prepped on Sundays, then an hour or two of reading or Netflix before bed. Simple, drama-free. 3 months passed with no contact from Olivia. I assumed she'd finally accepted the reality and moved on. I was wrong. It started with an email from my old landlord. Olivia had refused to keep paying rent after I left, even though her name was on the lease alongside mine. The apartment complex was threatening to send the account to collections, which would trash both our credit scores. I ended up paying the remaining 4 months on the lease, $200 down the drain, just to avoid the credit hit. Not worth the financial battle. I could afford it with my new salary, and it was a small price to pay for peace of mind. Then Dan called to tell me Olivia had been asking about me, specifically my new address in Denver. She cornered Kelly at the grocery store, man. Started crying about how she just wants to mail you some of your old stuff she found. Kelly didn't tell her anything, but I thought you should know she's fishing for your information. I thanked him for the heads up and made a mental note to warn the building management not to confirm my residency to any unexpected visitors. Then, she showed up again. It was a Friday evening in early autumn when my intercom buzzed. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I asked who it was. "It's Olivia. Please, just 5 minutes." I should have ignored her. That would have been the smart move. But curiosity got the better of me, and I buzzed her up. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her hair was different, and she looked exhausted. She was clutching a manila envelope and shifting nervously from foot to foot. "Can I come in?" she asked. "5 minutes," I said, stepping aside. Once inside, she stood awkwardly in my living room, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows with their view of the Denver skyline, the new furniture, the obvious signs that I'd built a life without her. Tuck, who had been napping on the couch, perked up at her scent, but didn't rush to greet her like he used to. Smart dog. "Nice place," she said quietly. "What do you want, Olivia?" She took a deep breath. "First, to give you this." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a check for a substantial amount, my half of the wedding deposits I'd transferred to her. I didn't use the money for a vacation. I've been seeing someone about my issues instead. I set the check on the coffee table. "Keep it. I don't need it. It's not about whether you need it. It's about doing the right thing." She twisted her hands together. "I know what I did to you with all the James stuff. It was messed up. I can see that now." I didn't say anything. What was there to say? "The way you left, it wrecked me," she continued. 2 weeks before our wedding, at the same restaurant. It was brutal. Her voice broke. "But I deserved it." She paced to the window, staring out at the city. "My therapist says I have abandonment issues from my childhood. My biological dad left when I was 8, came back when I was 12, left again when I was 15. I'd finally gotten close to him again when he died during my senior year of college. That was new information. Olivia had told me Mike, the man she'd introduced as her father, was her real dad. She'd created this whole narrative about her parents being married for 30 years, that she had this perfect, stable family with a contractor father. Another lie in a long string of them. Mike was probably just her stepdad or her mom's boyfriend. "I'm not here to try to get you back," she said. "I just needed to see you face to face, to tell you I'm sorry. I was scared of being abandoned again, so I kept trying to knock you down a peg, keep you insecure." It was stupid and cruel. She stood to leave, pausing at the door. "For what it's worth, you were the best of all of them." I didn't see that until it was too late. After she left, I sat on my couch for a long time, Tuck's head in my lap. I didn't feel anything special about her showing up. I just felt done. It was like watching the finale of a TV show I'd stopped caring about halfway through the season. I never cashed her check. I never responded to the email she sent a week later reiterating her apology and saying she was moving back to Michigan to start fresh. I heard through Dan that she'd gotten a new job. Seemed to be doing better. Good for her. As for me, I stayed in Denver. Got promoted again 6 months later to Director of Special Projects, overseeing all of the company's development work in Colorado and Wyoming. Bought a house with a yard for Tuck in a nice neighborhood 20 minutes from downtown. My neighbors are mostly young professionals and families. The guy next door is a mechanical engineer who's rebuilding a '67 Mustang in his garage. We've become pretty good friends, grilling together on weekends and watching football games. Sometimes I think about how close I came to marrying Olivia, to tying myself forever to someone who made me feel inadequate every day. but mostly, I'm just grateful that I got out when I did.